Hi guys, welcome to my channel Lush Foliage. I hope you guys are fine and are safe. So today we are going to be talking about another beautiful foliage plant called as the Dieffenbachia Reflector. Now as we all know, Dieffenbachias or the dumb canes are easily available in all the local nurseries. It's a very common plant. But there are a lot of varieties in Dieffenbachias, and one of this variety of Dieffenbachia is Dieffenbachia Reflector. Now this variety is quite unique and it is slightly rare. In fact, 2 years back, it was very difficult to get hold of this plant. But today, because of a lot of propagations and a lot of sellers, it is readily available online. Now, I'm not very sure if you will find it in your local nursery. As I said, it's slightly rare, so you might not find in your local nursery. Especially for me, I have searched in all of my local nurseries. I haven't found this variety, so I had to purchase it online. And if you might have seen my unboxing video, probably a year and a half back, I had purchased it online, and now you can see it's doing quite well. Now you can see the very beautiful leaves on this plant, and that is what tends to make this Dieffenbachia stand out from the rest of the plants. Now definitely this plant is very easy to take care, just like any other Dieffenbachia, even though it's very rare. But there are certain things that you need to keep in mind when it comes to light. So we will quickly start talking a little bit more about in detail about the care requirements. So let's start with the soil mix. Now again, I tend to use the same soil mix which I use for all of my plants, which is a mix of coco peat, garden soil, sand and perlite. Now basically they prefer to have a well-draining soil with a slight amount of moisture. So that's why we tend to use coco peat so that the soil can stay slightly moist. We use sand so that the water can drain out easily. Perlite is not going to make the soil compact, it's going to make the soil airy, which our Dieffenbachias love. Now the most important part is the light requirement. Now a lot of Dieffenbachias do quite well in full sun. There are some varieties that don't do quite well in full sun. So this is one of the varieties. So please do not keep this variety in direct sunlight. The leaves will get burnt. You'll have to keep it in indirect but bright light. There was a lot of confusion because there are certain varieties, hardy varieties of Dieffenbachias that can do well in full sun as well. But this particular variety, please don't expose it to direct sunlight. You can either keep it in indirect bright light or medium indirect bright light. The best part about this plant is that you can even keep it indoor, you can even grow it outdoor. But you have to be extremely careful because Dieffenbachias are slightly toxic plants, so you want to be careful when you are placing them indoor. Now talking about the watering requirement, as I said, they prefer slight moisture in the soil. So whenever you see around 1 to 2 inches of the upper layer of soil is dry, go ahead and do complete watering until the water starts passing through the drain hole. Ensure that you have a pot that has a drain hole because Dieffenbachias do not like to be sitting in soggy wet soil. If there is water stored in the pot, the roots will get rotted. Now talking about fertilizers, you can add fertilizers during spring, summer or during the warmer months. But please avoid adding any fertilizers during the winters. Now I wouldn't say that Dieffenbachia tends to go completely dormant, but it's always better to not add fertilizers during the winter season. Any which ways, even if you do not add fertilizers, it's absolutely fine. Dieffenbachias still tend to thrive with less nutrients as well. Now in general, this plant does not get affected with any pest, but there are cases at times, very rarely, they might get affected with spider mites. So always check the underneath of the leaves. If you see any kind of spider mites, you can always go for any organic solution that you have been using for your other house plants. But as I said, it's quite rare. Usually this plant does not get affected with any kind of pest. Now talking about propagation, it is very easy to propagate this plant. In fact, any Dieffenbachia, it's very easy to propagate. You might have seen my other video as well, wherein I had done a leaf propagation. I'll put that link as well in the description below. You can check it out. Now what happens is that as this plant starts to mature, as this plant tends to get older, it starts getting a little bit leggy and you will start to see the stem, or they call it as the stump. Now, if you want to propagate this, all you have to do is just cut off the stump and then put it into the dry soil. The remaining portion that is there in the original pot, you will start getting a lot of new leaves on that. So basically, once you do the stump cutting, which is the stem as well, when you tend to do that cutting, you will have two plants. One is the one that you have cut, and the other stump that is still there in the original pot will again start to produce more leaves. So in that way, it is very easy to propagate dumb cane. This plant will do quite well in a temperature that range between 15 degrees Celsius up to 32 to 33 degrees Celsius. They can even handle slightly warmer temperature. But if you are from a place wherein the temperatures are very extreme during summers or during winters or both, then you can definitely grow your Dieffenbachias indoor. But if you're growing them indoor, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind. One is that do not keep them directly under the air conditioning vent or the heater. Otherwise, the plant will get damaged. And there is another important thing which is extremely important, which we will be talking in the later part of the video of growing your Dieffenbachia indoor. Now, talking about humidity, this plant will do quite well in average humidity as well. It's not very picky about high humidity, but you have to ensure that if you are from a very dry environment, ensure that you keep the soil slightly moist. Now, the most important question, is this plant toxic? Yes, Dieffenbachias are extremely toxic plants. You have to be extremely careful while handling this plant. Now, the toxic part of this plant is the sap and the plant milk. Whenever there is a breakage or there is a cut on this plant, the plant tends to produce a sap or the plant milk. So whenever you tend to do propagation, whenever you tend to cut the stump, always ensure that you're using gloves, because if the plant sap or the plant milk comes in contact with your skin, it can be itching, it can burn a lot, especially for people who have sensitive skin. So in case if accidentally you come in contact with the plant milk or the sap, immediately wash your hands. Always use gloves. Another important thing, after you are done with the propagation, ensure that you clean the blade, scissor, knife, whatever was used for propagation, because even the residue that's left on the blades or on the scissor, if that also comes in contact with your skin, it can lead to irritation. So when the plant milk and the sap is very toxic, you can imagine what's going to happen if you tend to ingest or eat the leaves. So you have to be extremely careful. If you know anyone who has ingested or eaten the leaves, immediately seek medical help, because this plant is highly toxic. That's the reason why if you are growing this plant indoor, you have to ensure that it's away from the reach of small children and pets. Usually this plant is grown outdoor for the same reason. So if you are growing it indoor, ensure that you are very careful where this plant is placed. So apart from that, this plant is a very common plant that is usually found in parks. It's usually found in a lot of landscaping because of its easy to take care nature, and it's a very non-fussy plant. But you have to be extremely careful when it comes to handling of this plant during the propagation. So guys, I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe, and keep planting.